Okay, so I come from a drumming background, and so my main focus, I feel like, is drums. And I feel like if you have a really solid drum track, it's just the baseline for everything else. So I'm going to start with that. I'm using a lot of layers here, but this is the best drum sound that I've come up with so far. So here's my kick. I've started, let's start with FM8. Okay, so I've started using like an 808 at 41 hertz under the kick, because I've found that a lot of the kicks that I'm using are kind of centered at 60 hertz. For instance, get some volume here. So if you look at where this is centered, this is the kick that I usually use. It doesn't really go as low as I want it to. I've been listening to like a lot of Knife Party and analyzing the frequencies, and they're really centered at 41. Even in the dubstep stuff, even with electro, all over the place, it's at 41. So I have this FM8 here, and that's pretty low. That's 41 hertz. That's a lot of speakers won't even pick that up, but at the club, you'll definitely hear that. If you see with the spectrum here, let's open it up here. Yeah, so that's right there at 41 hertz area, and I'm basically just EQing just the bottom in there. And you'll notice also here, I have a compressor, and that's side chained to the kick also. So if I take this off, I've noticed that that's just too much, but I kind of want it to come afterwards, right? So I have that side chained in, and then the top. So together, I'll take off this sub. Okay, so the difference there is really huge, especially when playing live. I find that when my tracks get mastered, it somehow takes out a lot of the low end when it's squished. So this really helps with that. Any questions on that at all?
So how many layers is that kit? The one, is it 3 layers?
Yeah, right. I have 3. I'm using 3 at the moment. I used to only use 1, but yeah, the more I go on, the more I realize this is kind of for laptops. I need that click in there, and then this is the main body of it, and I'm taking out the low end to make room for this. So yeah, there's 3. There's this, kind of the punch of it, the mid, that real low end for the clubs. Yeah, and then there's a click. All good on that?
Are those Ambient samples?
Let me see. I know that this top one is. I really like the Dirty Electro 2-pack. I think I'm also shortening it too. Yeah, it's at 1.14. It's a little too long for me, so I think I shorten it too. Yeah, these 2 are Vengeance, and then like I said, this one's kind of just an 808 from FM8. Yeah, so let's move on. There's the kick. That's as far as I've gotten so far. It's for me, drums is just an ongoing process. It's like I said, it's my main focus pretty much. So I just have like snare days where I'll work on my snare for like 8 hours, 10 hours. I've never put hours into drums and regretted it. So that's something I would recommend, just spending a long time just on one drum. All right, so here's my snare. By the way, this is the boring part. I get that, but yeah, all this stuff really helps. So this is a bunch of layers. I have that, kind of doing the same type of thing, but with a little more layers in there. I have the trigger, which we'll talk about later. This is for the top end, that white noise type of. And then one thing I've recently started doing is I have like a really acoustic sounding snare on top of it. So let's check the whole thing here. So one thing I've learned doing this is there's a sweet spot when it comes to the length of your drums. If it's too short, it's let me try this. I'm gonna put a gate on here. So if you have it too short, all right, it's not working out. You just gotta trust me here. If it's too short, it's not gonna have that punch that you want. But if it's too long, it also loses punch in a weird way. So you just kind of gotta find that sweet spot. And then you're gonna want to work with reverb tails on a clap to give it the illusion of being long, especially with when you're making dubstep and things like that. Okay, so the rest of it's pretty self-explanatory with just basic hi-hats and stuff. So let's play the whole thing now. Here we go. Yeah. So there's that. It's a pretty simple beat, but yeah. Any questions about drums at all? Yeah.
Are you compressing them individually, or are you compressing them individually and then in groups also?
It's pretty much, for the most part, I'm compressing the group. When it comes to my kick, I'm actually not compressing at all. Yeah, it's pretty much just straight. But yeah, with this snare, I have a compressor over the group, and that's it. Yeah, everything else is pretty dry, just EQ within the group. Yeah. All good?
Can you actually go over in detail, like similar to how you went over? Could you go over the hi-hats in similar detail to how you went over the rest of the?
Okay. Yeah. When it comes to hi-hats and when it comes to drums in general, usually my favorite sound is the most organic one. I don't really tend to like the hi-hats that, I don't know, that sound like techno. You know, I like something that sounds like it's actually on a kit, coming from a drummer's perspective. So when I'm picking hi-hat samples, I try to get ones that sound as close to a real set as possible. You'll notice a huge part of making something sound realistic and organic has to do with dynamics. I'm not only affecting if you go in here, I'm not only affecting the volume of the hits, which is obviously really important, but I'm also affecting the length of the decay time. So the louder it is, the longer it decays for. And it's going to sound really unnatural. Let's say if I took this out, this is going to sound really unnatural to me. That's not how drums work. Usually, if you hit something softer, it's going to be for a shorter amount of time. And if you hit something louder, it's going to be for a longer amount of time. So I've artificially done that in here with... You'll notice, yeah, the longer or the louder the hit is, the longer it goes for. So I guess other than that, it's just sample choice. It's a lot of just... You guys know that. So, and yeah, does that work? Okay. Cool, so let's move on. I'm going to play a little bit of this. This is a remix for Zed's Dead. So you'll notice a huge part of what makes this punchy and what makes this sound fat is all of that stuff that we talked about at the start. Like, it's going to be boring and it's tedious to work through. It takes hours and hours and hours. But I definitely recommend spending at least 50, 60, 70 hours on your drum kit. It just completely changes everything that you do. Yeah. So let me go to this. This is rendered out, but let me show you what I'm using here. All right, channel presets. All right, so one thing I wanted to talk about was I feel like a lot of amateur producers, when they're starting out, focus too much on the synth itself. This is just my opinion. I find that so many people spend too much time in here thinking that you can solve all the answers in here, but I don't think that's the best way to go about it. I tend to go pretty simple when it comes to FM8, when it comes to using Massive or whatever, Silent. And then the real work comes later. You see I have like so many plugins on here. So let me show you what this sounds like without all these. All right. So as you hear, it's pretty weak. Like, I wouldn't want to use that, but it's really what you do afterwards that makes it. So I have an EQ on here. Camel flat. This is Sound Toys Decapitator. I've been using this a lot recently. Combinat. Just distortions on distortions here. Sausage fattener. Flanger to widen it out. So it's just crazy to me how you can take a sound that sounds so weak and it's really what you do afterwards. And the cleaner the sound is to start off with, the more room you have to affect it. So I feel like that's a definite tip I would work on is keep this as simple as possible. And then once you have a good chain afterwards, mess around with just really simple things like, change different wavetables, that kind of thing. So this is, that's the bass I'm kind of using at the moment. Anyone have questions about any of that? Yeah.
How often do you commit some of your channels to audio? And
okay, the way I see it, I like to always have the choice to change things. And once I commit to audio, it's kind of like saying that's how it's going to be. So I try not to do it. But certain times I have to do it. Sometimes I have certain plugins that mess with the audio, add little tails to things. So sometimes it is necessary. But I do it as little as possible. I'll say that. So there's that. Let's see what else. So a big staple of what I do is actually a pretty simple sound. I'll play it here. This sound is really, really simple, and I feel like everyone has their own variation of it, but it's just like, I used to call it an organ, but I guess it's not really an organ. It's just the cleanest type of saw sound you can imagine, and I mean, I can't tell you exactly how to make yours because everyone can do it their own way, but I recommend messing around with a sound like this. One little tip I like to do is to duplicate it and to offset the milliseconds a little bit. I don't know. You can do it, I'm sure, in FL and all these other programs. And set one to the left, hard right, just to widen it out a little bit. And then I also have doing something similar, but in silence. Yeah, so with this, it's the same thing as what I was saying before. Simpler is better, for sure. Yeah, a lot of my work is really melodic, so I knew from the beginning that I had to have a sound that I could play really complex chords and they would still come through. I feel like with a lot of synths, if you were to play complex chords, it kind of clashes. So yeah, there's that. Let's see. One thing I've actually been using recently is Razor. Anyone have Razor? Or yeah, it's awesome, right? Yeah, it's really cool. I don't know if I could find. Yeah, okay. Let's see if this works. Okay, maybe not. So with this type of thing, this is something that I've committed to audio. But one thing I recommend trying with Razor is set this filter, if for those of you that have it, set this to vocoder and try sending audio through this. It's actually really cool. Some of these sounds I would have never thought to make without that. So like this. That's me talking into a mic and just saying, just making weird noises and throwing it through Razor, and you can get the weirdest things. Let's see what this is. Same thing with this. Like, there's no way I would have ever made that in Massive or in Silent or anything, but you can get some odd combos. So yeah, that's something I've been doing recently. Just try messing around with vocoders, especially Razor. And another thing is, if you don't want to sit there and just make noises, put like, why isn't this going? Yeah.
Teenagers, but then of course everything I can see is sad, even when you smile, even when you laugh.
Put like an acapella through there, whatever. I just find it gives you combos that you wouldn't normally think of. Yeah. So let me move on. Classic Ableton problem. There we go. By the way, that first sound right there, that's also Razor. Razor is really cool. Like, hold on, let's see. Okay, so what I'm doing here, let's break this down. Okay. So let's take these envelopes off. Okay, so I'm not great at bass synthesis. I'm going to be honest. It's not my forte, but I feel like the more I work on it, the more I realize how much envelopes play into it. And I don't think that I had really utilized it enough. So listen to this. Let's take off clipper and string. Okay, so this is basically just a saw note here. It's kind of cool. It shows you the visual there. Look how crazy it is. You add on a string, which is, they have like stretcher, beat tune, beating, stiff string. That kind of gives it that string, like guitar almost type sound. Clipper. And this is just amazing to me how much you can change it using like something like a notch filter here. and applying the same envelope across all three. So it started out really simple. We just had a saw, turned on the string, and look at this. Yeah, so once again, Razor's awesome. So there's that. Let's move on. Like I said, if you guys hear anything and you want to know how I did it, let me know. Yeah.
Do you automate a lot your filter envelopes, especially in the synths? There's awesome filtering going on, or is it mostly modulations?
Can you give me an example?
Like in many parts.
Like in this part in the drop?
Like mostly your harmonic synths.
Okay. Are you talking about this kind of thing? Or were you talking about something like this?
More kind of like the first example.
More like the first example. Yeah. I use a low pass filter all of the time with that.
We automate.
Yes, I do. It's very rarely just me throwing an LFO on there or something like that. You'll see. Here's my frequency, and the way that I like to do it is at the start, I'll usually filter it down so you only hear the lows. I like to surprise the audience with how full my sounds are. You know, so you'll give it to them at the start, but kind of toned down, and then wait until the shock moment to show them exactly how bright and how cool that synth really is. So yeah, I'll usually start, like you said, filtered out. Yeah, you'll see all the way across. I've specifically filtered. I mean, low pass filters are your friend when it comes to this synth for sure. Yeah. Let's for instance, if you played this, hear it without that. I'll take this off. It's just so much less movement. It works, but it's in your face too much. Yeah. So I definitely listen to the difference. Yeah, I believe heavily in contrast. Yeah, so.
You just use a good old low pass.
Oh yeah, I use auto filter. A lot of guys like Volcano from Fab Filter. That's right. Yeah, I haven't really messed around too much with that, but yeah, no problem. Yeah, so there's that. Let's move on a little bit. Also, let me go to this ARP right here. Once again, Reactor, Razor. It gets really cool artificial stringy sounds like this. Like, I think this is just an awesome... I'm a big fan of ARPs, but recently I used to just use one, but now I like to layer. So I have that wood finger, like I said, on top of whatever this is, like an ode, or yeah, from Contact. So here's without it. Just adds a lot of movement. Yeah. So here's a good example of something that I've started doing within the past couple of months. Let's take this out. So here's a spot where it's kind of empty. Like I said, I'm about contrast. So I like to have parts that are kind of low key, and this is one of them. So one thing you'll notice, I think this sounds too synthetic. I think at this point, with the other stuff, it's not so obvious, but at this point, all I hear is this was made with a computer. And I don't like that. So I have a bunch of, if you go to freesound.org, they just have a bunch of really cool ambient type noises. So listen to this. This is rain with crickets. So it's really simple, but it completely can change the vibe of a track from this was made with a computer to this just sounds like a song, you know? So listen to the difference. Here's without it. Sounds like there's too much silence. And then listen to this. It's subtle. It's subtle. It's not the first thing you think of when you're making a song. Like, yeah, I want to add in the rain with crickets. But it's the small things that really count, you know? And most people won't even hear it. But they will subconsciously, and they'll like the song more. I promise. So try that. In a lot of my songs... Let's see. Let's go to that later. But if a lot of time when I start a song, like I said, I have things filtered in, and it sounds a little too quiet for me. So I'll just have like a subway noise or something like that. What's up?
Could we take a look at the specific settings on the sidechain compressor on the Oud synth?
Yeah, sure. That's what I was going to get to. That, which is that I use the same sidechain for everything. For every single instrument, but yeah, let's do it now.
Are you using a one sidechain? Like how many sidechain processes are going in that whole session? Is it basically just one over like all the harmonic synths as well as the bass, or is it?
Yeah, let me show you. So, what I started doing about a few months ago has completely changed the way I work. You'll see everything says sends only right here. Usually it's set to master, but I have everything on sends only. And if you go to the send, this is specifically for basically for just for this compressor. And you'll see I have a really high ratio setting, short attack, short release, and really low threshold. And that's for everything. So if you play this, and that's sidechained to the click of my kick. So the reason I like doing that is twofold. One, because it really helps with CPU. Like, I don't know if you guys have this issue, but before, when you have so many compressors running on each track, it's just going to hurt your CPU so much. So that helps because you're only running one compressor. And also, I find that you get a way tighter sound when you're compressing everything the same way. So I would definitely recommend messing with that. And it's nice because if you say, man, I wish my threshold was lower, or man, I wish that release was a little longer, it takes 1 second. That's it. And it does it for the whole song instead of having to go, okay, go through this track, this track, this track. It's really annoying. So there's not many cases to me when I want one track to have a different sidechain than a different track. If so, you can do it, put it on that track and don't set it to sends only. But maybe for the vocals or something like that. For the most part, my basses, all my synths, all that stuff, just run it through the send. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Any questions about any of that? Do you guys do that? Anyone? Yeah, cool.
I just recently realized that.
It's really nice. It's like revelation, like, why haven't I been doing this whole time?
I felt the same way.
Yeah. It changes everything for me. It makes everything hit so much harder, and you don't realize. Even if you don't realize it when you have different compressors on different tracks, you'll have like one release at 27 and the other at like 32, and you're like, whatever, it's not a big difference, but it is. It adds up. It's additive. So there's that. Let's go on. One second. Have this issue where when you bend a note in silent and then you go on, it keeps it bent, so you have to like reset. There you go. Okay. there's that. Like I said, I'm a big fan of contrast. So if I'm about to do something that's like smack you in the face, I want to have a little rain with crickets before it, you know? Rain with crickets and then silence. I just think it's so much more effective that way. You'll notice right before I have like a count of silence. It's just really effective. Yeah. So, here what I'm doing is, so I have that bass sound that we talked about before, or something like it at least. Same type of thing, just really simple when it comes to this. But the chain is really where it's at. There's that. And then I have this synth that we talked about before. With the sub under it. There's piano in there. But really where it's at is this. It's kind of a huge super saw. So there's one part of it. The best way for me to do this sound, or at least so far, is to use multiple layers. So I have like, 5 here? So there's that. This. Kind of doing something similar. You'll notice this one's detuned. If you're going to have multiple layers and you're trying to make something sound big, I've recently started like detuning at least one of the layers. I'll show you the difference before and after, but here's just some white noise. So in total, you'll notice here's without the detune. Sounds a little cheesy. It sounds a little synthetic with it. Yeah. There's that. And then if you're wondering, for that sidechain part right here, LFO tool is your friend. I don't know if you guys use this plugin. Anyone? Yeah. One issue, if you use it, one issue I have is that the phase is off. Usually, and I don't know why that is. It must be the latency or something. So if this is usually set to 0, if you turn on the Met, listen. It comes late. You guys hear it? It's really important to notice that and to take care of it, because usually I feel like I've seen people just throw it on. Oh, whatever. Okay, there it is. It matters. The only way to make this punchy is to have exactly where it stops needs to be exactly where the kick is. So one kind of method I'll use is I'll render to audio, and then I'll look at where it is. And if it's late, if it's late, then you need to set the phase more like this, and you just need to adjust it and keep printing to audio, and you'll see, compare it to the grid or compare it to the Met, it'll be early or late, and you want to find your number. My number is around 290. Yeah, so just a little tip, if you're using this, make sure your phase is correct. Other than that plugin's amazing. Yeah, so there's that. I'm going to open up a new project here. Let's go. Yeah.
How did you decide how much to detune that one synth?
Just listen. There's no magic number I can tell you. Yeah, it's just let's try it. Let's go into it real fast. So if I have this, let's set it to, see the detune here? Let's set that to 0 and set that to 0, basically 0. I'm sure there's more things in here I'm not realizing, but this is obviously too much. You know? So the chords aren't really coming through, so you just want to find a happy medium. It's usually pretty close to tuned. But yeah, just keep comparing back, and you'll hear it for sure. All good on this song? Yeah.
Is there swing on the drums or on the instruments themselves? Or
Swing? When it comes to this part? No. With this song, it's in duple, as we call it with drums. So there's duple or triple. Duple's going to be the 2s, the 4s, the 16s, whatever, and triple's 3, 6, 12, 24. So a lot of people like to mix the two, or some people. I don't. I typically am in one or the other, and if you switch everything. This is all duple. It's, yeah, the way you know is you count it out. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a... triple is going to feel like swung, like you said, and no, there's no swing in here. Yep.
Just a few words in terms of the emotional arc, so to speak,
Yeah.
of the piece, because I hear there's a lot of structure in the.
Okay, yeah. It's hard. I view music the same way I view movies, and the same way I view walking through an art gallery. It should take you on a trip, right? That's all I have in my mind. Is so at the start, you set up the key of the song and the tempo, basically. But you don't, like I said, you don't want to give away all your eggs yet. You just kind of show them the beginnings of what kind of sounds you're starting to use. So you'll notice I have that sound in there, but like I said, I'm not showing them the whole thing. One thing I've started doing is, and I got this from Maddie actually, is doing a pre-drop, like a fake-out drop. So it'll start, and then feels like right here it's about to kind of drop in a way. And the trick here is to use some of your tricks. So I have that bass in there, but the chords are still low pass. And then now we actually go into it. Yeah, so with this specific song, it's basically just build, fake out, drop, real build, drop, I guess. I don't know. I'm not good with the terms. I kind of just go by ear. And then I like to have an interlude section like this that I showed you. Yeah. Like I said, I like to have a part where I take out everything and it's kind of relaxed. It kind of gives you a second to breathe and also sets you up for the mountain. The mountain can't seem as high unless you have the valley, right? Yeah, so try to get you as low as possible without people falling asleep, basically. Yeah, so that's this part. And a lot of people are afraid to play things like this live. I'm not. I like the audience to be, not bored. Bored isn't the right word, but to be able to take a second to breathe. And then, like I said, it makes this just crazy. Yeah. I guess that's the best I can say. I don't know. I do think like that subconsciously, but I don't ever say it. I work alone, so I don't, yeah. Everyone good? Yeah.
Master bus? Is it?
Dry. It's dry. Yeah. I learned from someone a while ago that if the song's wrong, then the song's wrong. If what I will do sometimes is I'll put in like a Voxengo elephant or whatever, some type of limiter just to make it a little louder. But the more I read online, it's probably best not doing that. If something needs to be fixed, it's going to be better off fixed in the tracks. That's my opinion. If with my mastering engineer, I just tell him make it louder. That's it. If there's an issue, then it's my fault and I need to fix it. So, yeah. Yeah.
For the breakdown, the part when you're like in the jungle and stuff.
Okay, yeah.
What instrument did you use for the chord?
Let me see. It's the same instrument, oddly enough. Like he was talking about with the low pass. It's really the low pass. It's this same instrument that we did here. So I just have it low pass really heavily, so you just kind of starting to hear what's coming. What I also have over it is a lead from Razor, which is this. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, sure. Oh, I think what you're talking about is actually a piano here. That, yeah. I really like piano tech, but I never use it with the velocity all the way up. I actually love turning down. It's kind of the idea of screaming a really loud whisper or a really quiet scream. I like the idea that when you whisper, it's usually quiet, but it has a certain tone. And if someone was to blast a whisper at you, or if you were to hear a little guy screaming. So I like to play with those opposites. So with this, it's a really loud whisper. It's a piano that should sound like this, really quiet, but then I compress the hell out of it. Like, it's so loud. I treat it as if it's not a whisper, but it is.
Distortion on it?
No, there isn't. If there's any distortion, it's from the compressor. Yeah. You see how quiet it usually is, but I'll just crank it. Yeah, and then turn it all the way up. Or, like I said, if you have a piano that should sound like this and then make it really quiet, that's also an interesting thing. I just like playing with expectations like that. Yeah.
How do you go about writing your chords? Or do you start off with chords?
Yeah, I start with chords after I've done my drums. It takes a long time, man. The best thing I can tell you, or the best advice I can give you, is to start with the root note and figure out what basic chord you want, whether it's minor, major, or whatever. But then just mess around. Just duplicate a note. See, like with this. So. Right, that would be the simple version. But then I just kind of drag a chord. Like another note would work there. You kind of get a sense for where a note could go and how weird that would make it. The note could go there. It could go there. It'd be a little dissonant. I decided to put it here. But listen to the difference between this. That's just the simple version. And then this. It adds so much character, one note. So the best thing I could say, like I said, is just figure out what the root note you want. And then once the chord's in place, add little things that you're not supposed to do. Add dissonances, add... This shape works a lot, where it's like you'll have something here, a gap, put something in between it, or put something right below it. It's really experimentation, and I wish I could give you more than that. I hate boring chords. It just gets me. It's like, why would you do that? It could be so much more interesting. So I always try to make every chord as interesting as possible. But you'll also notice, if you've ever played around with chords a lot, it's easy to have too many notes also, and for it to be just muddy and mean nothing. So finding the balance between boring and too much is it's hard. But listen. Like that. Like, I don't know what that is. I'm not good with telling you what the notes and what technically it's a seventh or whatever. I don't know. I just know it sounds good and it sounds interesting. So, yeah.
Can we take a look at what piano tech is or what?
Yeah, sure. It's just it's $100 and it's the best $100 I've ever spent. It's just really simple. Yeah. Piano. This is the stage version, and if I played through, let's see. Here's classical. Here's jazz. I just like it because it sounds really realistic. And then I'll usually turn on. There's reverb here. I'll turn it off, and then you can also mess with the velocity and all that stuff. There's also an EQ in it itself. I don't know. It's simple. What I'm doing with Piano Tech itself is really simple. It's pretty much just a preset, but it's the way you use it for sure. What's up?
Do you get your bass line from the low end of your chords typically, or?
What do you mean by that?
Well, and so if you opened up piano roll.
Yeah. The bass line is the root note of the chord, yeah, but the bass isn't coming from this piano, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I'm saying, like, do you get the notes from, like, the chord you're making?
Yes. 99.9% of the time, the bass note is going to be the root note of the chord, yeah. I'll write the chord, and the chord basically tells me what the root note is, which in turn is what the sub is, yeah. Everyone good on this one? Any more questions? Okay, let me start to open up something else. Let's see.